We were lucky enough to get a grant from the National Lottery under its COVID-19 recovery programme earlier this year for a project which shone a spotlight on the gifts and talents of people who are shielding and challenged the prevalent stereotype of vulnerability. The project was guided by a co-production group of people who are shielding, all amazing people who happen to have a clinical vulnerability to this horrible virus. As most of you know, I've been shielding myself, and so have the privilege of being included in this group. They have been wonderful people to work with, knowledgeable, generous, creative, and with very strong opinions about the best ways to achieve the aims of our project. A small but significant word change proposed by our co-production group at the beginning of our project shaped its focus. It had been originally called valuable, not vulnerable, but at our first meeting the group unanimously decided this should be changed to valuable and vulnerable. The reason was that our vulnerability is real. We all had physical or health conditions that made us particularly susceptible to catching the virus and likely to become very sick. What we were challenging was not the fact that we were vulnerable, but rather the myopic view that vulnerability defined us and hid our value. We saw vulnerability and value as part of being human and didn't want to whitewash away our vulnerability as we focused on our value. For me, my family and I were acutely aware of my vulnerability throughout this pandemic, and I have been carefully shielded as well as shielding. I have run concuts throughout the last year without a break, except for appendicitis, but that's another story, and seen the value of our organisation as we've grown and expanded into new areas. The relentless language of vulnerability in the media, but also in the tone of the official shielding letters and in the sporadic contacts with harassed local authority officials, has, however, been demoralising and alienating. At times I felt like two people: the busy CEO of a valuable community interest company and just a statistic shielding in order to protect the NHS. The valuable and vulnerable social media campaign we ran a month or so ago was a delight, as people stood shoulder to shoulder, acknowledging their vulnerability as well as their value. We all realise that as we emerge from lockdown, we're all to varying degrees aware of our vulnerability. Many of us feel tentative and scared as we re-enter a world which contains encounters with other people. Thankfully, we have role models, and we can take a lead from people forced into shielding who've made their lives work despite the restrictions and have stayed resilient. Our project's coming to an end. We've learnt so much, not just from the activities of the project, but from each other. There will be a splendid report about all we've learned, but we already know that our most important lesson is about the power of language to empower as well as alienate. We may all be vulnerable sometimes, but we're also all valuable. Let's remember that.